He then orders his soldiers to tie up Daniel with chains and proceeds to torture him to gather intel from the American soldier, but his loyalty beats the pain from the torture of the enemy. The movie begins with a video monologue of the supreme leader of the terrorist. He explains that the waging of war will not stop unless they revolutionize the world to their own accord, which he believes will result in world peace that everyone will benefit from. The terrorist group invades a small town with not much fire and manpower for retaliation. The citizens begin to run as the terrorist fires at them. A killing spree occurs, and they capture the men and kill most of the women as they see no purpose in keeping women at war. After they collect the remaining survivors, Supreme Leader gives them another chance to join their army, but the citizens decline their offer to join the revolution. He mercilessly shoots them without any hesitation. Meanwhile, after hearing the news about the acts of terrorism, the American president signs a waiver to form an international military squad of top-notch soldiers from all around the globe to stop the terrorism once and for all. And later on, at the military camp, Commander Briscoe arrives to debrief the team composed of Daniel, Ralph, Chris, James, Jacques, Galena, and Shu about their first mission of acquiring several devices that contains the maps and plans of the terrorist group. But the group cannot decide who to lead the squad as all of them are well-known leaders of their own teams from where they come. They collect their weapons from the barracks and inform each other about their specialty. Jacques is a bomb specialist, Galena's specialty uses the sniper, and the rest uses tactics and assault weapons like SMG and melee weapons. The squad arrives in a chopper for a faster transportation system than a truck, and the mission begins as they come. The team surveys the area for any possible terrorist members. But some of them still cannot function well as a team and have difficulty following orders from anyone. But Daniel asserts his presence and demands Ralph to approach and take down the enemy from afar. Ralph approaches the enemy and shoots him from behind. The squad regroups with him but reminds him to not kill anyone as they may provide information that may help them for their mission. Ralph feels cocky and prefers to work alone. They reach an area where they try to locate a confident man named Abib, responsible for gathering information for the terrorist group. They split up into smaller groups to quickly apprehend Abib. Wu and Jacques find Abib faking his sleep and start shooting at them while the remaining squad recovers the devices at the table. The sounds of the firearms alert the enemies, and they begin to surround the building they're in. Abib taunts Wu and Jacques by shouting curse words at the Americans, but Jacques retaliates with a bomb while shouting, "I'm a French." The rest of the squad apprehends another terrorist member guarding the devices and suddenly fights back by stealing Chris's pistol and shooting one of his fatal body parts. After recovering the devices, the squad regroups in one location. They carry the bleeding Chris at their back while shooting the surrounding enemies. They reach an alley that covers their side and back, making the crossfire manageable for their squad. Ralph, Jacques, Galena, and Shu defend the sides as Daniel and James attempt to prolong the life of the bleeding Chris. The commander orders the squad to follow an alleyway to their top left for their escape route, but fighting the enemies is more challenging than they expect. Ralph, Jacques, Galena, and Shu take turns defending the sides as they change magazines for their guns. They manage to pull it off and eliminate the remaining enemies, but unfortunately, Chris dies due to a fatal shot and blood loss. The squad retreats to their chopper, and the collection of the devices are successful but sadly lost a comrade in the process. The devices will help them locate the remaining forces and weapons of the enemy to protect their country and avenge their comrade. Meanwhile, the scientist fills in the details towards the supreme leader about the recent attack on Abib's outpost. He calls Abib weak as the enemy defeats him with fewer allies. He adds that he will sacrifice anything to successfully achieve his goal of revolutionizing the world with his beliefs. He orders the scientist to inform his army to prepare for any surprise attack from the American forces. Back at the military camp, Soldier Smith informs the commander that the laptops and other devices contain different sets of maps that show a particular location south of their military center is a possible base camp that holds both weapons and the research facility of the terrorist group. The commander orders the team to use the satellite to make an image and locate the area for the team's next mission. They also use the satellite image to plan the escape routes and where to position the sniper, Galena. Outside the camp, James confronts Ralph and blames him for the death of Chris for being rash on the battlefield. Daniel is there to separate the two men from bashing each other's heads. He reminds them that the one responsible for Chris's death is the terrorist and not Ralph. He wants them to carry out the mission and end the war. They all return to their post as they feel shame for trying to fight one another in the rage over a comrade's death. In the southern part of the desert, the Supreme Leader and the scientist devise a plan to utilize an element that will create a more enormous explosion while releasing a hefty amount of chemical that will kill the people within a radius that will inhale it. That same day, the commander orders the squad to use the chopper to survey the area that they believe contains weapons and the supplies of the enemy terrorists. The helicopter drops them far from the exact location to avoid detection from the enemies. They then escort Galina to her sniping position. The rest of the squad secures the area but notices it is too quiet to be a base camp for keeping equipment. Only a few soldiers are patrolling, and they execute them quickly with the help of Galina's sniping skills. The area is too quiet, and the squad senses danger lurking within it, and they must leave. It's a trap. The enemy shoots them one by one, but the squad avoids getting hit as they duck and run. The Supreme Leader orders the enemy to surround them as they do not want to escape as they uncover their nefarious plan of making a biohazard bomb that will kill thousands or millions of people. The enemy outnumbers the squad as they appear from the smaller tents hiding and waiting for the team to make a mistake. Commander Briscoe orders them to retreat, but James trips while reloading his gun. Daniel notices him and decides to act as a decoy for the success of his squad's retreat. Galina covers for them and shoots the enemy chasing the escaping squad. But after shooting some enemies, the terrorist surrounds Daniel, and the Supreme Leader approaches him and hits his head with a rifle, making him unconscious, thus taking his belongings. As the squad regroups at Galina's location, James regrets Daniel's decision to sacrifice himself to them for more time to escape. He decides to go back and asks who agrees with his plan to kill the enemy to rescue Daniel. But Ralph tells him it will be a death wish to return without a proper method to save Daniel from the enemies. They hop back in the chopper and retreat to their military camp. Later that day, it frustrates the squad that they lose another comrade on the front lines due to being careless. Commander Briscoe assures them that they will rescue Daniel as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Commander Briscoe calls the president to give his update on their team's recent findings. He informs him that the terrorist is trying to develop a bomb that can damage a large radius. The president tells the commander that they need to locate the testing area of the enemy to prevent them from using the bomb that may hurt civilians. But at the enemy base, Daniel wakes up while the Supreme Leader threatens him to get out of the cage. He complies as he must live until his comrades rescue him from the enemies. The Supreme Leader brags about his idea of freeing people, and he must revolutionize it according to his own meaning of freedom. He then orders his soldiers to tie up Daniel with chains and proceeds to torture him to gather intel from the American soldier, but his loyalty beats the pain from the torture of the enemy. Back at the military camp, the soldiers prepare for their next mission while Galina cracks the code for where the enemy will strike next. The location is just 15 miles away, north of their previous mission location, where they are sure where they are keeping Daniel as their prisoner. Commander Briscoe calls the president and informs him about the possible genocide that the terrorist is planning to accomplish by testing their newly created bomb at a nearby location 15 miles away north from their last mission's location. The president warns him to not fail this mission, as he does not want to lose another vital soldier from their squad. The call ends, and everyone at the military camp prepares for their next mission. The day for their mission comes. The squad of Jacques, James, Galina, Ralph, and Shu prepares their equipment at the barracks, and suddenly Commander Briscoe shows up and gives them an additional set of clothes for their disguise to safely blend into the crowd where all citizens are covering their skins. He explains that it will not blow their cover and will hide away their weapons to avoid alerting the enemies. That morning at the enemy base, the scientist informs Supreme Leader that the bomb is now stable and ready for its initial testing. Supreme Leader tells him to gather his men to march east of their location, where the town's leader is a puppet of the Americans. He wants to show the world, especially the Americans, that they are not fooling around about their plan to revolutionize the world. Eventually, the American soldiers arrive at the town first to prepare and stop the possible terrorism of the enemy group. The soldiers blend in the crowd and listen to the town leader's speech. The first part tackles boosting the morale of his fellow countrymen to fuel their anger towards the terrorist group, while the second part expresses his dismay towards their fellow countrymen that are now part of the terrorist group, which only seeks to prove that their views are correct and will not let anyone stop their goal of revolution. Finally, the terrorist group arrives in the city riding black pickup trucks and vans. The Supreme Leader carries the bomb in a suitcase and leads his men towards the middle of the town to threaten the town leader and take him as a hostage. The group of soldiers notices the arrival of the Supreme Leader, and they go to their respective positions. Galina aims from the top of a building while the others stay alert for any aggressive actions by the terrorist group. He gives a speech to convince the people to join their group and fight for their cause to revolutionize the world according to their views. But he keeps threatening them townsfolk with violence to imply that they will execute their plan with any means necessary. The Supreme Leader points his gun toward the town's leader as they assert dominance and show their power. He orders one of his men to set up the bomb as he controls both the trigger for the gun and the detonator. Although, Supreme Leader notices the reflection from the scope of Galina's rifle. He calls them out and provokes them, causing panic in the townsfolk. He shoots the town's leader, which starts the crossfire between Ralph's squad and the terrorists. The terrorists hide behind the civilians that serve as their meat shields, while Ralph and the others are very careful about where they are shooting to avoid collateral damage. The Supreme Leader presses the trigger button for the bomb and immediately retreats as he does not want to get hurt and leaves his troops to fight the American forces. Ralph and the squad help evacuate and protect civilians as much as possible. The terrorist forces retaliate by shooting the civilians that are running away from them. The opposing forces continue to shoot at them as Galina repositions herself away from the enemies. Still, as Jacques throws some of his improvised grenades, he gets hit with a bullet in his right arm, which disables him from defusing the bomb at the center stage of the city. Shu, Ralph, James, and Galina eliminate the remaining enemies to defuse the bomb, which will cause the death of many people who inhale the chemicals. Jacques orders Ralph to defuse the bomb for him as it only has 40 seconds left on its timer. He asks for Shu's knife and gives it to Ralph, who guides him toward the process. Jacques tells him to open the timer slowly and questions about the color of the wires. Ralph responds with red, green, white, and blue. Jacques screams that he loves his country and orders Ralph to cut the green wire before the timer runs out. Ralph cuts the green wire, and to their surprise, the timer stops at precisely 1 second. Jacques screams, "Thank God," as Ralph asks him if he really knows what wire to cut to detonate the bomb. Jacques responds with, "I would rather die than cut off the color of my country." The movie ends with the squad reporting to Commander Briscoe to bring the good news that they have successfully stopped the bomb from detonating and to reduce the number of deaths of the civilians. Commander Briscoe orders them to retreat as they did an excellent job for this mission. They all walk away towards their chopper as they help Jacques to walk. After some time, they arrive at the military camp and ask for an update on its location of Daniel. Commander Briscoe responds with an order to group at the barracks to show them a video that may help determine Daniel's current location. As they arrive at the barracks, the commander informs them that a video from the CIA contains a clip where the Supreme Leader tortures Daniel while he is tied up with chains at his wrists. Commander Briscoe asks the squad when they will be ready for their next mission to rescue Daniel while ending the terrorist group. Ralph, Jacques, James, and Galina respond, "Count me in." Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.